What do people think makes them look cool, but actually makes them look like a douchebag? When I was younger, the only thing anyone ever noticed me for was my knowledge, so naturally, I assumed that more knowledge equals better person. Of course, I wanted to be a good person, so when I didn't have any more knowledge left, I started making up stuff to keep up my non-existent reputation, and damn, did I make up lots of BS. I'm trying not to do that anymore, though. A friend of mine once brought another friend that I had never before met to our weekly trivia night. The girl was a huge bitch to the server that we see almost every single week, to the point that she wrote her a snotty note on the receipt when she paid. There wasn't anything particularly wrong with the service, she was just being rude as a standard action. That was an instant "you are never invited back here" moment. I work in the service industry, and when I go out I've had friends bring other friends who act like this. I have straight up scalded and called them out in front of the server and made them apologize. Why are you trying to ruin someone else's day? Like, go fuck yourself. I'm a very patient person, but I have zero patience for assholes. I'll make you leave if you're rude to a server. I don't give a fuck. When people talk like that, it's two things. A. Once in the blue moon they got lucky and found someone who would do the deed, and now they have to brag about it so everyone thinks they had a very active sex life, and that was just an example of many encounters. B. He is just lying to make himself appear as a player. I know plenty of guys who have great success with women and have no problems finding a new one each week. Not one of them is bragging about it like this. Even if someone specifically how hot a girl he has hooked up is. This, people hate to admit it, but yeah, that guy who brags about having sex all the time. He actually might have sex all the time. But that doesn't make him doing that, the bragging, any less pathetic, or uncomfortable. I dislike when people resort to the lying to compensate conclusion, because all that does is inadvertently say that if it's not a lie then that makes the behavior okay. Truth or lie, it's still gross to openly brag about your sex life to people who aren't encouraging you to, or to share personal details about someone else without their consent. I hate these pranks. Not to sound old and crabby, but pranks used to be something everyone could laugh at and were harmless, like a sticky note on the bottom of your computer mouse. If scaring strangers gives you joy, you're not a prankster, you need professional help. Edit. Wow. That's a lot of responses. So I have been trying to think of a good prank response for my stepdad. Some time ago he put giant googly eyes on the front of my car, didn't hurt the car. And I didn't notice for 3 days. Got me good, and we both laughed our asses off when he told me it was him. I'd been going to the store, work, etc. Had no idea. I've been trying to think of something good and along those lines to get back at him. You guys might be the right crowd to ask. Any ideas? Something harmless obviously, but that he may not notice right away. My favorite is switching all the furniture in multiple rooms of the house. My second favorite is putting a rubber band around the trigger of the old school sink sprayer hose trigger so that the next person who turns on the water gets hosed. Occasionally I forget and then I get hosed. But my favorite prank of all time was a family friend who was narcoleptic and would fall asleep randomly when he got excited or stressed or after someone told an especially good joke. Anyway, John loved to hide and jump out and scare his wife and would randomly hide behind a door and wait for the right moment. But, his wife Carol had figured this game out and had the perfect weapon to use against him. She would walk in place, calling, "John. John. Weary yo." And he would get so cranked up with anticipation that he would pass the fuck out right where he was hiding. Carol would then walk around the house and find him in a limp pile behind a door or in the bathtub, snoring away. I miss them. And the ones who speak as fucking loud as they can just to ensure the attention never leaves? Edit. I really feel like I should explain myself better. While writing this down, I had some very specific people in mind who were known to be loud even other than the tonality of their voices. Basically people who cross boundaries and try to establish themselves as the prime member of a group they're engaging with. More of a personality thing than about physical aspects. I have had friends who are pretty loud-voiced too. Even I tend to raise my voice in excitement sometimes and have to be told to tone down. I'm sorry if this came off the wrong way, I didn't intend to XD. MLM Hustler LOL. I am sorry that happened to you. I went to a Christian school and one day at lunch a good Christian classmate had her Bible open and was calling people over to read a passage all while looking and pointing directly at me. I asked one of the kids she had called over why Beth was pointing at me. He said, "Oh, she's reading from Revelation that she insists proves you are the Antichrist." I just replied, "Well, now my secret's out," and kept eating. Let's just say I didn't fit in and really didn't want to. Didn't see it myself, but heard the stories. Early 90s, and this fairly effeminate guy was always the target of this bully and his friends. Had classes roach there, so the guy could never get a break. Went on all through middle school, and in 8th grade, the target finally had enough. All I know is that one day in science class, it was the last straw. You know those big ass stone tabletops? Slammed the bully's face into it a couple of times. Teacher only stopped it when the kid started bleeding. Lucky for him, he only got suspended and not expelled. Years ago I went to school with a kid who had seizures so bad that she had to wear a special helmet, among other problems. She was the target of relentless bullying by one boy in particular. He kept getting away with it because he was discreet and the victim had difficulty speaking up for herself. Well, one day she finally snaps. I didn't see it personally, but the way I heard it, she basically head-butted the guy with her helmet until his nose exploded. Bully had to go to the hospital. His shitty parents showed up looking for vengeance, but quickly ran out of steam because of two problems. 1. None of the teachers, students, or staff saw anything, despite the incident occurring in a crowded hall, and 2. The victim was a disabled girl. The bully ended up getting arrested for pulling a knife on a cop a few years after we all graduated. He was never going to amount to much in life. I have friends like this and I'm so glad I put distance between myself and them over the years. A couple years ago we were all in Disney and were just sitting around eating, and one of them turns to look at my phone and loudly goes, "Are you playing Pokemon Go?" To which I replied, "Yeah." And they all proceeded to shame me for playing. Since then, any time I've been with them and look at my phone, they ask if I'm playing Pokemon Go in a mocking tone. My current group of friends will see me play and not say a thing other than maybe ask a question. Big improvement over the last group. There was a Twitter thread about it a few years ago with a photo. The poster was proudly explaining the way it worked as if he was a genius in his quest to get good service, but aside from being a really trashy thing to do, he started with 5 singles on the table in what was clearly a typical dine-out restaurant, not a greasy spoon or a truck stop diner or anything. A lot of comments were in the vein that said, if 5 is the maximum you will tip in the first place, then no wonder you think this is a good idea. It got pretty heavily savaged, and rightly so. This has always been true with music, and I would argue was even more true before, when you had to buy physical copies of things and they would be on display in your house. It was quite a commitment back then. It was also much harder to find out about cool music. You almost had to know the right people or immerse yourself in a subculture. This made people with good taste very useful. Now it's just so easy to have fleeting fancies with this genre or that. Had a guy I thought I was closer with and we joked around a lot. One day he got triggered and told me to fuck off, etc. A friend of ours came later to me and told me he didn't mean it and stuff. We talked for a whole while, and while a lot was taken as a joke, I went too far sometimes while still thinking it's all fun and mutual. Made me realize that there is a thin line and you should be careful nonetheless. Felt really bad because I didn't intend to be an ass. My friends and I's friendship is basically based off inside jokes and banter. I have epilepsy and we all joke about it all the time because it can be kind of funny, but there's a fine line between banter and an insult. I can take pretty much anything because dark humor is my coping mechanism, but there are some days when doing the Harlem Shake on the floor just isn't funny. YK? They apologize, we move on, and continue bantering. No need to get angry about it. But if it was someone who I don't know calling me a spastic, I'd obviously be offended. LOL. I was hiking with my family in Montana last week. We were the only people on the trail for the entire day, but as we were leaving we could hear music coming closer. Two hikers came into view. As we came into view for them, they turned the music off until well after we passed each other. In the area we were in, it is recommended to hike in groups and make noise to scare off any bears. I wondered, since it was only two hikers, if they played the music to scare off bears. Either way, I was okay with it as they respectfully turned off the music as soon as they saw us. I live in a pretty small residential area where literally every house has small children or grandchildren that play outside daily. Anyway, a guy bought a garage doors down from me and hosts regular meets. Obviously we all expected the same behavior, but turns out that they're all actually really cool. No speeding or excessive noise. It's kind of funny watching them drive down the street in first or second gear trying to be respectful. Best part is all the kids love to see the cars drive by, get excited when someone revs the engine for them. It's not often you see such a diverse group of people get along so well. Reminds me of the car club I was a part of in college. A new guy found out one of his classmates had an AMG 63, expensive, fast Mercedes, and invited him to come out. We had permission to be in the lot. This dude I guess wanted to make an entrance and comes careening into the lot at 100 plus mph, promptly loses control, and slams into a curb hard enough to destroy his front wheels, bumper, radiator, and God knows what else. Then, of course, blue lights come on. The guy gets a reckless driving ticket and the club is no longer allowed in the lot. The guy tried to play it off so cool too, like he didn't care at all. It was so pathetic. Maybe he actually didn't care though, because we found out later that his dad in Dubai bought him a brand new one 3 weeks later. Some people. Edit, I will add that the crash was pretty spectacular. The curb was a part of one of those islands in the middle of a parking lot where they plant trees and stuff. He didn't hit a tree, but he definitely went airborne and left a little pieces of his car all over the island and about 5 feet past it. It was like seeing an action movie in real life. I had a new guy start at the job site, and the first chance we had to loiter and shoot the shit, this brat proudly let us all know he just got out of prison, like it'll make him seem hard and exotic or something. He drove drunk and killed one half of a newlywed couple, and has no regret. He still drinks behind his parole officer's back and drives despite losing his license, too fast always, drunk usually. Everyone was just disgusted. Especially the guy who had been in a coma for a few weeks due to a drunk driver, and the guy who had a loved one killed by one. I suppose there could be reasons for going to prison that legit are badass, maybe killing someone who molested your kid, or stealing to fund a life-saving medical treatment for a loved one, but most crimes are shameful. I suppose this kid listened to some sort of aggro music that makes it sound like doing time is impressive. Not sure what the deal was, as I tried very hard to avoid his company. I have a friend whose house I hated going to growing up because they had these huge golden retrievers that would jump all over you when you came in, and they all just thought it was so dang cute. Same friend, grown up now, has a young, but full-sized, golden retriever now, and recently told me a story about how she took him to a crowded festival. He was just curious about some kids in front of them in line, and the dad of the kids told her she shouldn't bring her dog out if he's not trained. She told me this story to show how other people are assholes. The end of the story was her screaming obscenities at this man as she drove away. I wasn't there, but I just didn't know what to say about that one. She is completely the asshole here. Apparently her partner told her the same. Luckily, I just sort of went oh while wondering how to tell an old friend that they're being a huge piece of work. Constantly talking about your sex life, how you cheat on girls and what you did with them. I'm speaking strictly of someone speaking of them in a belittling way and kind of disrespectful. I had a classmate who literally all he cared about was sex and how many girls he could bang. Every single conversation was about that, to the point of him fucking most of his friends' exes and shit. He filmed a bunch of girls without their consent too and brags about this and cheating on girls, which he made them believe he really liked them, also laughing at how he treats them and shit. I don't get how this is cool in any shape or form, and so many guys looked at him like a god or some shit. Like genuinely looked up to him and wanted to be the same way. It's extremely toxic, douchey and just wrong emo. Yelling at retail, fast food, or just giving off any sense of smug superiority over them. People in those positions do not often get paid enough to deal with abuse. In fact, no one gets paid enough to deal with abuse. As someone who once worked in retail, I can assure you that you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar, and I absolutely went out of my way for the customers that were nice to me, to a point where I'd even stay late trying to fix their problems because I wanted to genuinely help them, and this is coming from someone who never works overtime. However, if you yelled at me, was snarky, talked down to me, etc., I can almost guarantee you that I'd enforce company policy to a T and ensure that it did not favor whatever you wanted me to do for you. This is the thing that people don't realize: those customer service reps are being paid to represent their company, but it's not them that you have a problem with, it's the company itself. They are not the company. They're just the person being hired, barely anything to represent it, while the executive or high-level employee that likely made the decision that is screwing you over or making you angry in the first place is hiding away in their posh corporate office. I'm not saying that you shouldn't get angry or let someone who is lying or trying to advantage of you off the hook. There have been situations where I've been firm and dropped my smile against people in these positions who are either lying or being disrespectful, but I never raise my voice. It's not worth it and there's nothing to be gained from it. People around you aren't going to have any context either, they're just going to think you're some asshole screaming at some customer service rep who gets paid a borderline slave wage to deal with this bullshit on a regular basis. All of this is basically to say, be good to people. Talk to them in the way that you'd want to be talked to if the positions were flipped. You'll be a lot more successful and get a lot further. Shortly after I started smoking, my job asked me to go co-in a bit of the cigs around the property. 'Twas a McDonald's. I do so happily, it's a nice day out and I don't have to be inside a fucking McDonald's. About an hour into, think I've done enough, but my OCD and lack of will to go inside saw to it that I get every single cig butt. By the drive-through you can't see the ground on either side of the driveway. I spent my whole 8-hour shift making that place look good. Even my manager came out to help for a bit. After cleaning all those, I never tossed a cig again. When you start smoking and everyone is just tossing these things wherever, I never thought about it and did the same. After my cleanup day I wondered why I always just tossed them wherever was convenient. I don't do that with anything else, so why cigs? Now I'll keep my butts with me till I find. There's a whole of women being assholes to men after they hold a door open for them because the man is letting the girl enter. Let me put it this way, no guy holds open the door to let you enter. And in my case, I was taught as a young kid to hold open the door for anyone and everyone. And now I just hold open the door if I see anyone walking towards a door that I'm about to walk through. I was the kid who held open the door for 5 minutes while the entire store walked in and out. We don't hold open the door to make women seem inferior. We know you can open a door, obviously. We do it because we were told that it's good manners to hold open a door for anyone and everyone no matter what, not because we want to fuck you. Okay, Madison. I'm sorry, this really pisses me off. I'll hold open a door without even thinking about it. My head is usually thinking, man, I'm hungry, or do I have work tomorrow? And then some bitch will yell at me, excuse me, that's so sexist, even though I been holding the door for the past 7 p op before you because that's how I was taught.